Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Well, as you know, Japan and Russia are technically still at war. They haven't signed a peace treaty after the Second World War. Soviet Union never signed with Japan. Therefore, Russia did not sign anything with Japan, and they have some disputed territories. That is the Kuril Islands or the Northern Territories. Kuril Islands by the Russian name, and then the Northern Territories as by the Japanese name. That is north of, Hokkaido in northern part of Japan. So I have to start with this. I have been an admirer of Japan for a long time, since I was about 17, 18 years of age. I liked their culture, I liked their traditions, I liked their arts and all that. I admire them. But, I have to admit that politics is different than, a culture and traditions and all the Shanoyu and Kyudo and Bushido and all that, or who knows what. What do we have here? Japan asks the Russians to discuss a peace treaty with Japan now. This is very imbecilic, and I will tell you why. I will tell you how these Kuril Islands ended up to be part of Soviet Union, then Russia. And I will also reveal to you the hostile behavior of Japan, who is under the occupation of the United States of America, I think, militarily, politically, culturally, to a certain extent, and economically, and the hostile attitude and actions initiated by Japan because of, supposedly, Ukraine. Japan says, "Excuse me, sir, can we discuss a peace treaty?" And we're going to see the Russian reaction to this idiotic request. All right, let's start with the beginning. Or at least let's start with the current events. All right, here it is. First, let's start with this one. Associated Press. Japan says it wants to join a NATO command for the support of Ukraine. So these guys are getting even more than they were a minute ago. Tokyo. Japan expressed interest Tuesday in participating in a NATO command for its Ukrainian mission based in Germany in what will be a major boost in ties with the largely European alliance. Japan's defense minister Gen Nakatani announced his country's interest during talks with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. Mark Rutte is only a secretary. He's not in charge of anything. After providing the war-torn country with defense equipment and support, that's Japan, gave Ukraine defense equipment and support, and sanctioned Russia, Japan now wants to join NATO security assistance and training for Ukraine. All right, as NSATU headquartered at the US base in the German town of Wiesbaden. Details of the mission, including the possibility of sending any Japan Self-Defense Forces members to Wiesbaden, were still to be discussed, but any Japanese cooperation was not expected to involve combat in line with what has been Tokyo's post-World War II tradition of limiting its military role. Americans limited that, not the Japanese. When I was in school, we were told about that. The Japanese realized the horrors of the Second World War and decided to be peaceful. No, it was not like that. It was the Americans who told them, you cannot have that. The same thing as they did to the Germans. You cannot have that. Write your constitutions, bring them to me, the Americans say. You can't bear arms, you can't own guns. The freedom of speech should not be in your constitution. And then, that goes away, Japan and Germany. This goes away. That's how the constitutions of Germany and Japan post-Second World War occurred. You got that? Got it. But hey, we love democracy. So again, what did you catch that over there? Details, all right, were still not discussed, all right, but not expected. Japanese cooperation was not expected to involve combat in line with what. So it's not expected. It's like, I expect you to behave. But when you get to the venue, you're going to be like a pig. One thing is the expectations, the other thing is reality. Got it? So Japan is not expected, but when it gets to the nitty-gritty, it's going to change its expectations that you have. That's the first point. So remember, Japan, without having any problems with Russia, we're not at war, right? Let me tell you, this is Russia, this is Japan in Far East, this is Ukraine. Far, far away. Japan had nothing to do with it. But Japan was ordered, and it said, hi, hi. They got in and say, you know what, we're going to impose sanctions on Russia, we're going to do this to Russia, we're going to send military, we're going to send military assistance to Ukraine, to Russia's enemies. How do you call a person who's supporting my enemies? He's my enemy. And then Japan did all this. And then Japan now comes and says, excuse me, sir, towards Russia, can we discuss a peace treaty? And Russia says, child, go back to your little kibbutz over there and leave me alone. Let me show you Russia's response, and then we're going to discuss how they got to the Kuril Islands. It's very interesting because if Japan would have surrendered to the Soviet Union, the atomic bombs would not have rushed into Nagasaki and Hiroshima, or Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I will explain. Maybe you don't know that, but hey. Kremlin comments on Japan's call to finalize peace deal. So you see, Japan is the good people, and these guys are the bad people, you see. Tokyo's current stance towards Moscow makes talks on the issue impossible, Dmitry Peskov says. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has said that holding contacts with Japan about reaching a peace settlement is impossible given the hostile stance Tokyo maintains towards Moscow, including, this is from today, my friends. This is from April 8th. This is from today. Okay? All right. So, Japan's foreign ministry earlier expressed a willingness to finalize a deal that was never concluded after World War II. All right? The two countries have never formally formed a peace treaty following the war due to Japan's claim to the 4 southmost islands of the Kuril chain of islands, which is the northern territories of Japan, they say. I will show you a map, which were captured by the Soviet Union in 1945. And I'm quoting, Tokyo has hurried to fully support all the unfriendly and hostile steps taken by the West towards Russia. Correct, Peskov said. All right, so what's going on over here? We have this one as well. From Reuters, Russia sees no reason to discuss peace with Japan, the Kremlin says. Peskov. Okay, here is the map. So here's China, as you can see, this is Russia, right? This is Sakhalin, this is Japan, and these are the Kuril Islands, right there. You see that? And these are the northern territories or the Kuril Islands, okay? Here is Japan. Hokkaido Island, Sapporo is right here, the main city in the north, right? This is North Korea where the woodchuck resides. These are the guys who are also owned by Americans like these guys right here. And here, here is China. Got it? So here is what we're talking about. So what happened? Let me tell you. That's a fact. At the end of the Second World War, a Japanese delegation went to Moscow to speak with Stalin, and they spoke with Stalin and discussed a surrender to the Soviets, the Soviets. It was not the Russians, it was the Soviets. Stalin was not a Russian, so okay, let's start with that one. He was a Georgian. Jugashvili was his last name. So the Americans, seeing that, they say, no. You will not surrender to the Soviets. You will surrender to me unconditionally. Because that was the whole point. The Americans said, no, you're going to do it unconditionally. That means the emperor, Hirohito at that time, he was considered divine, like God on earth, by the Japanese and their Shinto religion, including the Buddhists, but in this case, Shinto. So they considered himself, Hirohito, as a god. Remember, since infancy until adulthood and so on, they knew the emperor was a god on earth. They really believed that. Some of them, most of them. So the American says, screw you guys, I'm going to take a shit on your traditions and everything else. You, Hirohito, the emperor, you would have to show up, and he did, on the radio and had a communique where he said that actually I'm not divine, and this is the most important thing, told the Japanese nation, you have to bear the unbearable. and we have to surrender. And the Japanese were, how seppuku harakiri gonna do? How come a god accept defeat from some baboons across the ocean? That's how the Americans were considered. Just so you know. Uncivilized, not uncivilized, unrefined, unmannered. People that would just build razor blades. That's how they're considered. In one of their military commands meeting, one of the guys said, I think it was Tojo, the Minister of Defense, said, we're gonna fuck them up, the Americans. What can they do? They only can build, make razor blades. That's it. Well, it was not so, but nevertheless. So that was the opinion about the Americans, cowboy, chewing tobacco, not washing, and being thugs. Anyway, not true, not true. So here you have it. And then, when the Americans heard about the delegation, wanted to, maybe they're going to get a better deal from the Soviets, they said, no, we're going to fuck you up. We're going to drop some atomic bombs quickly. We're going to scare the Soviets so they will not dare to intervene. And you're going to be my vassal state, not the Soviets' vassal state. So that's why they hurried up with the atomic bombs, among other reasons. And then the Soviets, it was a fight for that. And the Soviets invaded the Kuril Islands until these guys dropped the atomic bombs. And then these guys surrendered to the American vassalage instead of the Soviet vassalage, both garbage, because a vassal is a vassal, okay? And then that's how they accepted the unconditional surrender on September 2nd, 1945, on that little warship, if you remember, I think in the Yokohama port. You can see the pictures. Okay, when the Japanese come and they pop, and that's it. So that's how the Soviets got the Kuril Islands. They said, yeah, we're going to invade. No, we're going to drop atomic bombs. Okay, that's how it was. It was a plundering. It was who's going to get the neighborhood. It's going to be Al Capone or I don't know, what's his name, Luciano Balacacciano. Okay, two thugs who were agreeing to take care of this planet and divide it among themselves because they defended us from Adolf taking over. So we take over because we're the good guys, but we're going to drop 2 atomic bombs. So that's how it was. And since then, it was this thing, give us the Kuril Islands. Well, we're going to give you, but you see, you are America's bitch. So what are we going to do about it? We can't just give it to you. We need that for strategic reasons, military strategic reasons. So if you prove that you are not the Americans' batch anymore, we can, improve our little... Remember, even Putin went to the Kodokan, to the head office of judo, Kodokan it's called, and he went over there and he was the president of, how do you call it? It's called, I can't remember the term. Honorary president. He was over there, Putin. Now he's stripped of that. He's not the honorary president of Kodokan, Japan, judo. He was the word, and I can remember, 8th Dan or something in judo, Putin, and so on. Doesn't really matter. That's why you do it politically. I mean, after all, even Sean Connery had a black belt in Kyokushin, given by Sosai Oyama, just jerking off a few times. But that's a different story. So that's how they got it. And now these guys, Japan, was ordered by the Americans to do what they do. They did it, and now they want to say, hey, you know what? It's like this story, like this analogy that I always make. It's like a person who shows up at your house, goes at your house, takes his pants down, take a shit with diarrhea, and then says, oops, I don't have a paper to wipe my ass. You know what he does? Turns around, knocks at your door, you say, who there? And when you open the door, he said, excuse me, Mr. Gigi, can I have some toilet paper to wipe my ass? I just took a shit on your porch. And you say, oh, okay, boom, 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 boom. All right, so that's what Japanese are right now. They take a shit on Russia in Ukraine. They even continue and they say, excuse me, can I have some toilet paper? Maybe we can sign that little thing, the peace, treaty, and you give us the Kuril Islands. Can you? Please, come on, man. I mean, we're good friends. I mean, I love the Japanese, but I think that's idiotic at best. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.